I don't condone any way DUIs. And I want to send a message before we talk about DUIs to any service member that's listening. If you're going to choose to drink alcohol, for God's sakes, in today's culture with Uber and Lyft, there really is no excuse to drink and drive. If you've had something to drink, don't get behind the wheel and ruin your life or someone else's. It's a simple decision to call an Uber or call a Lyft. And I think my stance on that is probably not a lot different than the stance of many commands. Because what I see is you see these tragic results of DUIs because you make a stupid decision to get behind the wheel and drive when a $30 or $15 you call an Uber or a Lyft, as opposed to, it's not the 10, 15, 20,000 you spend on legal fees is ruining someone else's life. And so I guess with that message in mind, don't drink and drive. It's just stupid. And not only is it stupid, it's incredibly preventable. But if you're in that situation or you are pulled over, and maybe you're pulled over and you weren't drinking and someone thinks that you were, in a lot of states, and it's controlled by state law, you may or may not have a right to refuse. Each state is different. Now, in the military, you can refuse, but if you refuse, there's going to be all sorts of consequences. I know in particular the Army, it's AR 190 TAC 5, prohibits, it says if you refuse a sobriety test, the command can take adverse administrative actions against you. So you can refuse it, but let's be serious. If you refuse it, you're going to get handcuffed. You're going to get taken to the back of the car. They're probably going to get a command authorization to get a blood draw, and they're going to get your blood. And so while you can refuse, the reality is it's probably going to be futile, and there may or may not be a reason to refuse or not to refuse. I don't frankly do a lot of DUI cases, but if you do refuse, you can certainly have administrative action taken against you under the UCMJ. The Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force have similar regulations. Just off the top of my head, the Army's is 190 TAC 5. So yeah, if you can refuse, but you can you're probably going to end up in the back of that squad car, probably very similar to most states.
Are the same rules applied in the civilian world as they are on base? So in other words, if the laws of the state, if there was a base in Michigan, and outside of Michigan, if we were to get pulled over and we refuse a DUI, in Michigan, it's an automatic loss of your driver's license for 1 full year, regardless if you're guilty or not. You just refuse to do that, you're going to lose your license, period. If there was a military base in Michigan and it was the military personnel on the military base was pulled over and refused, would they fall under the same Michigan laws?
The short answer to the question is no, because the military base is a federal jurisdiction, and that's the vast majority of military bases. Some have concurrent jurisdiction on them, so some have really unique situations. But the overarching answer is no, they would not. Florida has very similar rules. If you refuse in Florida, you're going to lose your license, whether you were DUI or not, no matter what you were drinking. And I think a lot of states have very similar rules to Florida and Michigan. But on a military base, no, that's not going to be the same set of rules because you don't fall under the state. And that's why it's really important to understand jurisdiction. On a military base, it's federal jurisdiction because it's federal property and federally owned. And so the state rules aren't always going to apply, and they typically won't. And they typically won't because of the difference in state jurisdiction and federal jurisdiction. And so while the rules are oftentimes similar, they are not the same. And so those rules that what you would see in Michigan aren't necessarily going to apply to a military base that's in Michigan because, again, it goes back to the UCMJ or any of the regulations that, whether it's an Army base or a Marine Corps base, that those service members are going to fall under.